Okay. Okay. Good evening, everyone, to all our supporters out there. It's Mayor Weinstein with Mideast expert Mayor Jolovitz. We're going to be speaking tonight, discussing the Trump plan for Gaza to utterly annihilate the Hamas infrastructure and to expel what remains of the Hamas infrastructure. Today, President Donald Trump had meetings with the King of Jordan, and he emphasized that Jordan must be willing to accept Arabs from Gaza. And in fact, the king was open to it. Last week, the king was speaking about declaring war on Israel, and now it seems like he's folding. Um, President Trump announced yesterday that if all the hostages are not returned to Israel, that by Saturday at 12 noon, all hell will break loose. The ceasefire will be canceled. And in fact, today, the Israeli Security Cabinet adopted that policy, and the deadline is this Saturday, Shabbat, at 12 noon, Israel time. Mayor, there's been a lot going on. There is Elon Musk uncovering U.S. aid and how U.S. aid provided billions to the Palestinian Authority and Hamas, and the building of tunnels, cement delivered there. There's a lot more. We'll talk about it. We'll get into everything tonight. Mayor, how you doing? And let's discuss it.
Yeah, I'm doing well. We are in the middle of, I guess one would give this a label, Donald Trump and Gaza, the good, the bad, and the unknown, or the uncertain. And I will say this, even though there's so much that we don't yet know, if one was to look at it as the good, the bad, and the uncertain, the good outweighs the bad and the uncertain big time. We now have established a new paradigm of thinking in the Middle East, and that is, it's in essence, at least for the moment, has taken off any discussion of a two-state delusion, and these are good days. Now, the discussion that Trump has had at different levels with different media is fraught with contradictions, as I think we've mentioned before. But the one thing is certain, that the Arab world is taking him as a very serious player. They are quite afraid of his temperament, and therefore they are responding in a way that we never would have expected them to respond in the past. You mentioned, for example, Jordan, that Jordan has quickly changed its tune. Well, Jordan today, you could see its subservience to the American dictates, and King Abdullah, of course, was happy to be invited to the White House. But there is a negative to it. The negative is that Donald Trump seemed quite happy, and he said he was quite pleased with the King of Jordan because he was willing to take 2,000 sick children into Jordan immediately and help them. Well, when we're talking about 1.6 or 1.7 million Arabs living in Gaza, all of whom, let me emphasize, all of whom supported Hamas, all of whom supported October 7th, taking 2,000 in order to sort of assuage the concerns in the West is nonsense. And also, it isn't just nonsense. They've manipulated language. To say that they've taken 2,000 sick children is to play to their narrative, that the children of Gaza are sick. So anyhow, what Trump is doing is absolutely fabulous. He just cannot allow himself to be duped by an Islamic genocidal ideology that will not change its mind simply because he's going to be president for the next 4 years.
Seems like the majority, according to recent polls I've seen, the overwhelming majority of Jews in Israel support President Donald Trump's plan for Gaza. What they're reading, what they're hearing, anyways, what's being presented in terms of expulsion of in a polite term, the entire Hamas infrastructure, support base, cheering crowd, people who love it, that set up in their mosques and in their hospitals and in their homes missile launch places. And not only that, but many of the so-called innocent people in Gaza are taking Israeli hostages and holding them. In fact, even holding them in UNRWA buildings. So It certainly seems like it's a new era, and Elon Musk has been tasked with uncovering wasted money, and he's been looking into agencies like USAID. Mayor, what could you tell us about USAID? What's going on with that, and what kind of effect is that going to have?
Well, it's tremendous, and there's tremendous opposition by the liberals, the progressive, the Democrats in America for fear that we will find out the truth. You
Hmm.
mentioned in Israel that there's a majority of people who actually support Trump's new agenda. It's more of an idea, certainly, than a plan. The
Hmm.
problem is in Israel, those people who support it, 70% plus, have in
Hmm.
every essence been a silent majority, where the people who oppose it, and they oppose it simply because of Bibi Netanyahu on the merits, they're afraid that they might not get the few hostages that are still held. They oppose it. They are the loud minority, and they
Hmm.
are not to be ignored simply because the Western world listens only to them. There was a comment that I wanted to make when you talked about the innocent Palestinians. There are
Yeah.
two mistakes, and they're the
Hmm.
two sides of the same coin. The one is the notion that the Palestinians are innocent is a terrible, terrible premise to,
Hmm.
well, if they're innocent and Israel will somehow destroy or defeat or get rid of Hamas, then all of a sudden, why should these innocent people not then be entitled to their own state? It's a terrible, terrible, hill that we climb that we might regret. We have to be very
Right.
careful. The other
Right.
thing is, to a certain degree, we believe that Donald Trump has taken this attitude when he saw the most recent hostages who were released, and he referred to them as, he said they looked like they were spat upon, that they were like, he said, like Holocaust survivors.
Hmm.
And he talked about the way, and he said, this can't be allowed to happen. And he's absolutely right. But in that comment seems lost the fact that these three malnourished Israelis, and God bless their souls, were nothing compared to the October 7th, the victims of October 7th, of rape, of murder, of mutilation, women who had their breasts cut off, children who were burnt alive in their cribs, a child who was put in a mic. Where was the outrage then? Well, the answer was it lasted for a few days until Israel decided to retaliate. The outrage lasted only as long as Israel's response to it. So yes, the three hostages were indicative of the ill treatment that they received with Hamas. But my God, Israel's response should not be to the three hostages who were just released. It should be to the 1,200 who were butchered on October 7th, and the 1,200 or 1,400 or 2,400 who are going to die in the future if Israel keeps releasing terrorists in exchange for these hostages. What we've done is we've incentivized kidnappings on the part of the Arabs. And the Arabs have a different clock than we do in the Western world. They see Trump as having his power limited to his term. And beyond that, it's 1,400 years of Islamic genocidal barbarism.
Excellent point. What seems to be the reaction of American Jewish organizations to the Trump plan
Yeah.
for Gaza?
I'll mention one, J Street.
Oh.
Okay, J Street. J Street, which has been quite supportive of the Palestinians for some time. J Street, which promotes itself as pro-Israel, pro-peace, and they've added one a year and a half, 2 years ago, pro-democracy. J Street is an anti-Semitic organization which was welcomed by the Biden administration, and thank God that'll no longer be the case. J Street represents the very liberal or left American Jewish community. Most American Jews and organizations, in fact, think that this might be a very good thing. They don't know enough about it, but they think it might be a very good thing. To which I then say that if you look at the record of Biden for 4 years, and you look at what Trump did the 4 years previous to that, and what he's done since then, it doesn't explain the insanity of the American Jew, who to the tune of 70% voted
Hmm.
for the bad guy, voted for the administration which was anti-Israel, voted for the administration which sent USAID, USAID to the Palestinians, $2.1 billion since October 7th, and $774 million since Biden was elected between 21 and 23. That's the American Jews voted for that. They don't know enough of the, forgive them, they know not what they do concept, whatever.
Right.
By and
Right.
large, Trump is doing wonderful things, and if it continues, I think that he will finally be able to move the needle with American Jews and certainly with American Jewish organizations.
One thing I'd like to add about when you mentioned J Street is that the major support base of J Street is the Reform Jewish movement in the United States.
Right.
And in fact, Rabbi Hirsch, who makes a lot of videos extolling so-called virtues of the Reform movement, and he mentions, he's quite public, that it seems that he is now in the minority in the Reform movement. But the major support base for J Street is from the Reform Jewish movement, and increasingly there are rabbis that are anti-Israel in that movement. So I think it's important for the viewers to understand that when we throw out terms like J Street, some people might dismiss that. Well, that's an organization there. No. The support base is from many, if not the majority, of the Reform Jewish temples in the United States.
Right.
And it's in the conservative movement and in the Orthodox movement where the real support for Israel is coming from.
Well, just very quickly, because the clock ticks, and I know our new format is quite short.
Yep.
The Orthodox Jewish community in America, the modern Orthodox Jewish community, 82% or more voted for Trump.
Right.
75% of the non-Orthodox community voted for Biden. But I'm going to quote a very controversial figure of yesteryear. I think his name was Rabbi Meir Kahana, who once said about the Reform movement, he said, I have no problem with Reform Jews in America. They don't know any better. He says, my problem is with Reform rabbis, if in fact they can be called rabbis. And the comment that he made was a brilliant one. His comment was, the only reason that Reform rabbis in America even have a job is because they were fortunate enough to find a congregation of people who knew less than they did about Judaism. And they were hired. It's
100%.
It's a truism, and I think maybe we can pick up about the American and the Canadian Jewish community the next time we meet.
Mayor, we might meet in a couple of days, depending on what's going. The situation is moving so quick. But last words, last comments about what to expect for this Saturday, this Shabbat, 12 noon. Everybody's going to be glued to that time.
Yeah.
What do you expect to happen? Hamas already made a statement. They rejected Trump. They said no. And it's kind of like God in the story of the Jews leaving Egypt when it says, and God hardened Pharaoh's heart. Well, did he really? Or is that his entire personality, like the scorpion and the frog story, that he can't help it? That's how he is. And that's what Hamas is all about.
Here's my final comment. It's one that I've been making now for 16 months. The notion that Hamas is ever going to give up all, and I emphasize all, the hostages they hold is absolutely foolish. Anyone who believes that is delusional. And the reason is because Hamas, especially having been degraded to the degree that they have militarily, the only thing they have as a weapon of war are the hostages that they hold. The notion that they are going to give up those hostages is insanity. It would be a suicidal move on their part as far as their attempt to continue to survive and certainly to govern. No, they will not give up the all. In fact, I've always believed, and I've argued as much, that we don't even know who's alive and who's dead. And they'll simply tell us that the ones that are missing, when we do a final count, must have died with Israeli bombings during the past 16 months. It's nonsense. I'm thrilled with what Donald Trump has said. I'm thrilled at the position he's taken. But if he thinks that the Arabs are going to all of a sudden surrender, they won't. They won't.
Last comment from me, just a quick one. Something I believe after watching Trump for many, many years from the 80s, since I read his book, The Art of the Deal, and followed him somewhat. I never thought that he'd become president or anything like that, but just followed him, his career and his writings and his speeches. I think looking at his personality, reading his personality, is that a few minutes after 12 noon on Shabbat, Israel time, that if Hamas doesn't return everything, as Trump said, there's going to be some buttons pushed. I don't mean, a nuclear bomb or something like that, but severe action. We'll see. We'll
Can I
see.
mention
Yes.
one more word before we
Yes.
sign off?
Sure.
I mentioned that it's fraught with complications. The types of things that our side needs to be concerned about is that Donald Trump, as good as he is, and as wonderful as it is to have him as president, he still believes that Egypt, particularly Qatar, and at times Turkey, are honest brokers in the
Right.
Middle East.
Right. Right.
He needs
Good
to
point.
learn that they're not.
Absolutely.
Anyhow,
Great point.
thank you
Thank you
again.
very much, Mayor. And
Thank you.
everyone, please share this on your social media networks. We'll reach a lot more people. Thank you very much. Shalom, shalom.